Welcome, welcome, dear gentlemen and ladies, girls, men, cats and dogs from all around the world to another episode of the Schirach Show. I am so glad to have another episode for you, and today we are talking to Benjamin Casteillo, the founder of New World Together, a Frenchman that moved to Bali and was successful on the corporate ladder, materialistically speaking, and eventually he realized he's not happy. There's something missing, there's a disconnection between what he's doing and what he wants to do, and this discomfort led him to a spiritual awakening, several awakenings, so to speak, which some of them ended up in the psychiatry and hospitalization, as he was so open and shared with everyone how he felt and what he saw. Through several events in his private and business life, he then was forced to quit his job and go on this new journey, this spiritual awakening journey, where he shares his knowledge and how he has found out how things are connected: authenticity, sustainability, traumas, dogmas, and how we actually as a society, a global consciousness, can create a better, more sustainable world, and why in his eyes it's currently not working. So without any further ado, I want you to listen to the podcast and find out for yourself. Thanks for joining in, and here, welcome to Benjamin. Welcome. So, people, it has been a long time for me behind this microphone, 6 or 7 months, and now I have another guest, Benjamin Casteillo, which sits...
You can say Casteillo,
which currently sits in Bali and works together with a former guest on my show, Maria. And this was really fun because I listened to a podcast episode on the spiritual shit from Benjamin, and then I'm like, oh, this is very interesting. I searched for him, and he's coming very close from my hometown and has some common friends of my school together. So I'm very pleased to have you on the show. Something works with this law of attraction, right? You have this image, you want to talk to someone, and it happened actually several times for me. So you're not the first one, which I heard somewhere, and suddenly I'm sitting here in front of you. And Benjamin is French, living in Bali, has his own company, and it's a New World Together. You're looking at the law of attraction and the universe on a technical way, if I get that right. So,
to put it first, maybe.
Welcome.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me, Oliver. We are looking at how we can resolve the sustainability challenge of our times with human solutions. And so, of course, it implies understanding how the universe works and expanding our level of consciousness so that we can work in harmony with it.
There we go. So I did the long introduction. You see, I'm out of habit. But as I usually do with a guest which is coming the first time on the show, I'm asking some questions, a little bit background, and then to find out more on depth. We're going to talk about authenticity and sustainability, mainly. That's the goal. That's what we agreed. And how we get there, we will see. So for the people which don't know you, you have a few interviews out in French and in English. So we will link to all these other episodes as far as I can, so you can find out more and go more in depth with Benjamin. How you say it in French again?
Benjamin.
It's been so long again. Benjamin. In French or in English. So if you would describe yourself in 3 adjectives, why would you use those 3 adjectives, and what are those 3 adjectives?
First would be human, very human, because I think that's my first characteristic right now, speaking as a human being. Second will be evolving, because over the last 6 years, I came to learn a lot of new knowledge that has really led me to question myself and my perspective of reality, and actually to completely shift it. And this has been a journey of constant evolution, which has led to realizations that have completely shifted me. That will be the second adjective. And the third one, dedicated. That's because I see the importance of the type of evolution I'm talking about, and I'm talking about conscious evolution, which means learning to be connected to ourselves, to others, and to nature, which is what is needed for our species to overcome the challenges that we are facing. Because what I've learned is that the challenges that we are facing stem out of disconnection. And that disconnection is happening at many levels. And so it starts with disconnection from our true selves, but then also out of this comes disconnection from one another and disconnection from nature. And in a sense, I could say that the sustainability challenges that we are facing stem out of this disconnection.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, already in your answer, I have so many other questions. So we have to be careful that where I'm going.
I understand I'm opening the Pandora box, as I often say, but let's open the Pandora box and let's dive in.
Yeah, others say can of worms. For the ones who watch the video, we are drinking a lot of water. It's kind of hot. Another question I like, and sometimes it's very funny answers. If you would be the new color in a coloring box, what color would you be and why? It can be any color. It could be also transparent. It could be glitter, banana, whatever.
So that's kind of weird because the first color that came was violet, but I don't really know why yet. That's just the first color that came. I think because what it evokes in me is renewal, something that's kind of shiny and something that's kind of original, stepping out. But
yeah, but it came to you, right? You saw the color.
That's the color that came to me. That could also be because I'm wearing kind of a purple t-shirt today.
It's difficult to see, but yeah, it's on the screen. It looks very dark red. What is the color? Bourbon, or what is it?
Yeah, it's a Bordeaux.
Yeah, Bordeaux, a dark Bordeaux. Okay, so you violet, the higher colors up in the chakras. And
yes.
if you have a secret or a fun fact, not so many people know about you.
I've been put in psychiatric hospital 5 times.
5 times.
And I had 7 spiritual emergencies, and the first 5 I was placed in the psychiatric hospital. But I don't think that's not something I keep secret, but it's a fact that definitely makes my story stepping out of the norm, we can say.
So
we can say that my spiritual awakening was so intense and so overwhelming that it took me a year and a half to grant it. And before I could grant it, I ended up being ungrounded and therefore being institutionalized because people around me did not really understand what I was going through.
Yeah, I can imagine. I don't know if I had a spiritual awakening or something, because when I listen to people, how intense this can be, I'm like, okay, I think I didn't have it yet. For me, it's more a gradual thing of, seeing patterns, seeing stuff, like just observing what happens. But I don't have the feeling, for me, anything extreme happened where from one week to the next completely changed the way I look at the world or myself. But the way you describe it, so what happened? I mean, you said the last 6 years you were evolving because so much knowledge came into your life, and you see the world and yourself differently all the time. And now you say you have been 5 times hospitalized in the psychiatry. So what happened? What happened to you that it was so extreme?
So basically, so to place it in a bit of context, when it started, I was at the top of my corporate career, but I was really feeling lost in my life because the success that I found would brought me happiness was actually did not bring me happiness. So I had money, I had power, I had recognition, status, everything that goes with it. But I felt very empty inside. And one of the reasons why I was feeling very empty inside is that I was sensing, and it was sensing to a point that it became undeniable, that I was part of a system that's not sustainable. And so basically, the more I was corporate, the more I was climbing the corporate ladder, the more it was obvious to me that that system, which is focusing on short-term profits and growth, cannot be sustainable. And so I was connecting the dots between the way my corporation was functioning, and on the other side, an increasing number of reports about the destruction of the environment or growing social inequalities. And to me, I could feel deep inside that it was logical and that I was part of the problem. And so for years, I battled with that feeling and I tried to suppress it because I didn't want to think about it. I wanted to be happy and enjoy my career and everything that was coming with it. But ultimately, my conscience was really haunting me, especially when I got promoted as an independent senior consultant and I had a lot of free time. And so a lot of free time meant I had a lot more to think about my life. And I came up to realize that actually it was quite meaningless. So I went to a meditative retreat trying to find inner peace. And that meditative retreat did not give me inner peace, but it opened the inner dimension. And as this inner dimension opened, suddenly I became convinced that the solutions to avoid our self-termination were somewhere there, which I didn't know at the time where, but it was like I was touching something that could basically avoid humanity's self-destruction. And I kept diving in search for the answers. And ultimately, the answers, when they finally came, it was so overwhelming mentally and emotionally that I could not keep my ground. And so for a year and a half, so that was from early 2017 until May 2018, I had different, what I would call spiritual emergencies. So what is a spiritual emergency? It's a spiritual awakening that is so intense that we are mentally and emotionally overwhelmed. And because our society does not understand this, generally, it's being dealt with psychiatric institutions, which see it as a mental illness and basically medicate us to cut everything. The feeling, the download, everything that we are connected to becomes like disconnected. But we can function normally in society again. So the thing for me is that I knew from the beginning that this was not just a mental illness, that this was something else, that was something deeper, and that there was a risk to pursue this journey, but that there was also something that could be gained, which is knowledge, understanding that could help humanity not to self-terminate. And so I kept going. Despite the warning of the psychiatrist, that wanted to tell me that this was a mental illness. So they were calling it chronic mental illness that would probably require me to be medicated for the rest of my life. So I kept cutting the meditation and going back into this alternate state of consciousness to reconnect to this dimension and get more download. And it took me a year and a half for me to be able to connect to these dimensions without basically getting ungrounded, without losing my balance.
So the question for me to understand, so yes. You had this life crisis. You were a consultant, or what were you working as?
So at the time, yeah, I was an expert consultant for my corporation. So after climbing, so I had been a manager, then a senior manager, and at that moment I was.
And that was like
I was an expert consultant.
Yeah, and that was in France, right? Or
so that was in Bali. Yeah. So I had a corporate career in Bali, which made a lot of people very jealous, which was also a reason why it was hard to quit, because like technically I was having the dream career of so many people, a corporate career in Bali. But for me, the fact that I felt I was part of a system that's bringing us toward disaster I couldn't numb that down. And the more I was climbing the corporate ladder, the more it was obvious. The more I was like, damn, this is real. This is really happening. I'm really thoroughly feeling a system that's bringing us toward disaster.
Okay, so wow. So there's every time you say something, questions come up.
For sure.
So that means you were in Bali, you made an international cooperative career. As I understand, Bali is not that expensive, so you can afford a lot. You can have like a super luxurious life. And then the people around you, they were jealous of your career, and so they could not really understand your this connection with yourself? Or because were you talking to friends? Did you have friends, family to talk to about how you felt? Did
No,
they
so basically
judge
that's the
you?
thing.
Or
So
how?
so so let's before my spiritual awakening, I had feelings, but I could not necessarily express them. I could not necessarily put them into words. So this feeling that I was feeding a system that's heading toward disaster, that's not something I could put into words at the time. It's something I was feeling deep inside me, and it was truly disturbing me, but I couldn't really express it. And especially like every time I will try to talk about this subject, it will create so much discomfort. So like there wasn't really possibility to have conversation about this because people were just not able to talk about it. So I was trying sometime to express something about it. Sometimes I was inviting people before my spiritual awakening. I had my friends. Sometimes I was inviting them to watch documentaries, but I could sense the discomfort. And basically to bring this conversation was extremely hard. Basically, nobody wanted to have them. And so I was kind of dealing with those feelings alone and not really able to put things into words. And so when I went to the meditative retreat, something came up, which because before I was thinking about this problem, and the question was haunting me, is that why is this happening? Why are we driving ourselves toward extinction? What is the root cause of the problem? And for me, this was kind of really a question haunting me, because I know by experience that to solve a problem, we need to identify and address the root causes. That's why I ended up as an expert consultant at my corporate career. I am a very good problem solver because I love to dive at root causes, fix the problem, and then it doesn't appear again. And so this question of why are we driving ourselves to disasters, what are the root causes, was like the question without a possible answer at the time. But it was a question haunting me. And so when I went to the meditative retreat, I went there seeking for peace. But what came during the process, when I was basically opening myself to myself, diving in myself, was this is not just about inner peace. There are the answers in that direction. And so I became it felt like a call, like a mission. This is too important to be ignored. So I basically pushed myself toward that direction. I wanted to find out how can we avoid humanity's self-termination. And so suddenly, as you can imagine, from looking for inner peace along the process, it becomes how can we avoid humanity's self-termination? So I end up pulling into a much bigger rope than I initially started pulling onto. And so the thing is, as I dived in, I came out of this meditation retreat, and I kept meditating deeply to inside myself, wanting to know. And there's a moment, as I was pulling this rope, there's a moment where I ended up opening something within me. And, or I could say, nearing the place where I can have the answers. And what happened is, it's almost like this is really hard, right? So I don't know who is going to be able to understand that, because we are talking about something I cannot describe it like I could describe a table or something that is tangible. This is very subtle. This is in the realm of the invisible. But inside of me, there's like a door opened inside of me. And on the other side, there was this density and this intensity. And I could feel that I could go there. But information came out of that density and intensity. And basically the information that came were, okay, the answers are there. The answer to the question about how to avoid humanity's self-termination are there. But if you want to go there, you have to be ready to accept, one, that you can end up insane, and two, that you can end up dead. And so it was really scary. And so my first reaction when this information came was, whoa, no, whoa, no, this is too risky. Wow, this is really serious. But then I thought about, what am I truly putting on the line? And then I saw this miserable life of myself, this life which is not having any meaning. And I thought, finally, you know what? this is worth taking the risk. And so I kind of let go of all my fear to go insane and to die. And I went toward that density and that intensity. And next thing I knew, there was like an acceleration in my brain, and I was starting to get downloads, and then I was starting to feel emotions that I never felt before, so intense. And so I could handle it for a while, but very quickly this became out of control. It means that mentally I became imbalanced, both mentally and emotionally. And so what I understood at the beginning is that, okay, humanity has to awaken, otherwise it will self-terminate. And that my mission is to help humanity awaken, but I didn't know how to do it. And so I started to talk to people and say, guys, we have to awaken, actually. And then I could feel also we are all one, that there's an illusion of separation. I could really feel that and see that. And so I was starting to be like, guys, we are all one. This is an illusion, and we got to awaken, otherwise we will self-terminate. And people were like,
"You're crazy.
What the heck? Yeah, what is wrong with you?" Right? And so the more people were rejecting me, the more I was freaking out, and the more I was trying to explain them. And so I got into this vicious cycle where it became completely out of control. And at the end, I was taken to the psychiatric hospital.
And that was in Bali, right?
That was in Bali. And so interestingly enough, so I was placed in a psychiatric hospital for a week. And what I'm not telling here, because this is all long stories, right? But I had a spiritual emergency when I was 25. So I already had that happening to me.
Okay, now we don't know. How old are you? Not 33?
I'm 37. I'm 37 at that moment.
So that's right? Okay, so that's like 12 years ago. So that's like 5 years before what you described.
So basically, so wait. So right now I'm 44. 37 is when I went to the meditative retreat, and I had again a spiritual emergency. My first spiritual emergency was at 25th.
5, yeah. So 12 years before that.
12 years before that. I was in a business school, and I was seeking for answers. And suddenly I had like a veil falling off, and I had, you know what? This is all love, and we are just playing roles to be loved because we are afraid not to be loved. And this became a revelation at the time at 25. The next thing I knew is I was going to my business school and telling everyone that what we are studying is completely meaningless, and that everything is love, and that we are one. And so I felt like a prophet. I felt like someone who was going to unite humanity. And I was telling people, we don't need keys. We don't need to be afraid of each other. And I was throwing money in the air. And I said, this is just paper. It has no value. The real value is inside ourselves, is the love we have for one another. And I was so ecstatic, right? But so, of course, people had to find an explanation into what is happening with Benjamin. So the explanation was, okay, he's not doing well mentally. So I was brought in front of psychiatrist, and psychiatrist decided that I was psychotic. And then nurse came to pick me up, to bring me to the hospital. And I wanted to give them a hug, and they basically jumped on me. And next thing I knew, I woke up, I was attached in a bed, and I thought, okay, it's a misunderstanding. God will come to save me. But God did not come to save me. I was heavily medicated. And at that moment, they managed to convince me that I was psychotic, which in a way, it's true. I had seen the light, and I got blinded by the light. And I didn't see, I was not seeing anything but the light. I couldn't see the world anymore as it is right now. So they were not wrong. I was indeed, they had become unbalanced. But at the same time, they need not understand that this was the beginning of a spiritual awakening. So nobody could basically guide me, and I was medicated. I was told I suffer from mental illness. And then later on, I came to Bali, and in Bali, I met a healer, so that's when I was 26, 27, and that healer helped me to stop the medication. I was hooked on the medication given by the
what was it? Was it an antidepressant, or what was it?
No, they were basically antipsychotic medicine. So talking
about what does it do? I mean, I was on antidepressants, and I was like, no, this is not going to work because I'm not going to get better with the medication. So for me, it was dumping me down. So what did this psychotic medication do for you? Did you just get lazy?
So basically,
less thoughts?
Yeah, so it's gonna kind of, it cuts the feelings that you have.
Oh,
So it cut most of my feelings. So I become
numb.
not having any feeling, a bit numb. And it also cut the connection to the spiritual dimension. So to whatever is giving all these thoughts and these downloads, all these other dimensions. And so in a way, I mean, if people get imbalanced, it's a good medicine to get back into balance. The problem is that normally when people get back into balance, they should go into deep therapy, because if the spiritual awakening becomes unbalanced, is because of, we're diving into other subjects, but it's because journey of unresolved traumas. It's because we have wounds inside, and also because we live in a society where we constantly repress ourselves. And so a spiritual awakening is an awakening of ourselves. It's an awakening of what we have repressed inside of ourselves. And so it's common. I not say it's always the case. It can be more gradual, but for me, it was intense. It's like all the emotions I had, many emotions I had suppressed, many things I had felt, but I had not allowed myself to feel, because it's not considered as the social norm, were bursting out of me, right? And so 25, I had my first crisis. Now we are 37. I'm being put in a psychiatric hospital, and my first thought when I realized I woke up in this psychiatric hospital, so I was injected to sleep, and I woke up and I realized, oh damn, I'm in a psychiatric hospital. And
again, right? Same feeling as the first time you wake up after being injected.
Yeah. And that moment, my first thought was, oh my God, I had a relapse. And then there was this other part of me that was like, but you knew that this was a risk, and you accepted to take that risk to have the answers. Are you gonna give up now? And I was like, oh yeah, it's true. I was getting a lot of, serious downloads and stuff, and a lot of it makes sense. And so I was like, no, I'm not giving up. And so I took the meds at that moment for a month, and then I quit them, and I went to the other dimension. The door was still open. And so basically, long story short, so what is interesting as well is that at that moment where I was doing the meditative retreat and going to the psychiatric hospital, at exactly the same moment, my CEO in my corporations was kicked out of the company. He was forcibly retired, and the mission I was mandated on as an independent expert consultant was canceled. And so I found myself with basically no more corporate job. I was given the money I was supposed to get, and that was finished. And so I took that as a sign. I was like, wow, I'm having this, and my job just quit me. And I didn't even, I completely let it go. And so I was on this new journey, but for me, the question was still, what am I supposed to do with all of this? Right. And so I quit the medication. I went back on the other side, and the downloads get back, the emotions come back. I got really upset because I'm like, you bastards, you are the one who are wrong. I'm right. And okay, I was put back in a psychiatric hospital 4 times in 2017. But each time I will get into this trance, I will get more downloads, and I will somehow get more pieces of the puzzle. But I was still not able to control it enough to not be placed in a psychiatric hospital. In 2018, I had 2 other spiritual emergencies, but this time I was able to protect myself enough not to be hospitalized. So the thing is, my spiritual emergencies, they were very outgoing. They were, in a sense, very masculine in the energy, in a sense that I was not internalizing the process, I was externalizing it. So imagine there were moments where I had made like this WhatsApp group, and I was sending like everything that I was processing, I was sending it on the group. And so people will get like 200, 300 messages a day. So clearly, like, that was too much for most people. But I still, at that moment, although I was doing that, I was still conscious enough to isolate myself in a place where they could not find me. Because
you were
people were like,
attacking
Ben,
from
where
the
are you?
shadows. You were attacking
Yeah,
the shadows with information, eh?
exactly, right? So like, Ben, where are you? And I was like, I know you want to put me in a psychiatric hospital. I'm not going to tell you. And so long story short, during my last psychiatric emergency, is where I finally found ground in what I could call sanity or rationality. And that came as a realization. I realized that actually the society in which we are is not sane, is not rational. And so me going through this process was also me going through the irrationality and the insanity of our society. And basically, I also understood that it was not by yelling at people, it was not by sending them 300 messages a day that I will fix the problem. That was my own insanity. That wasn't sane either. So at that moment, I kind of get it. I'm like, okay, they are not sane, but I'm not sane myself.
It's like
And
the
so
mirror,
that's
right?
where,
It's
it's like exactly. And so at that moment, I started to really understand. Okay, I really gotta pay attention to myself. And so at that moment, I was really aware that okay, I was not dealing with something sane on the outside, and I had to integrate that in my process. And also at that moment, I also knew that my mission as a human being will be to provide answers to that dangerous insanity of society. Because why I say dangerous, ultimately, could summarize it like that. A sane, intelligent species will not endanger itself out of technological progress. The reason why, as an intelligent species, we endanger ourselves out of technological progress is because we are insane, right? And so at that moment, I realized my mission is to provide solutions to that. And I also got the download of the mission that I was to create a project, and that which became New World Together. And the idea at that moment was so one thing I understood from that spiritual awakening is that what's destroying us is the fact that we are all in competition. We're in competition for power, we're in competition for resources, we're in competition for status. And so as we're fighting over the turf, we're not taking care of the garden, and we are destroying the garden, yet we need the garden to live, to survive. The garden is what's keeping us alive. And so I started to, with all the downloads and the knowledge I'd access in this alternate state of consciousness, I started to make little conferences, to make public talk. And I realized that people were actually agreeing with me, or at least they were like, oh, wow, what you're saying is really interesting. You know, it made me think of this book written by this guy. Have you heard of this book, Sapiens? So it's the book from Yuval Harari, you know, it's a very, very famous book. And so I knew I was onto something. I was like, but what I also realized when I started my project and I started to, with a small team, really bring these things in public, is that it was not that people did disagree with us, but they could not take the information and do something about it. There was psychological blockages. And so that's when I realized that okay, I need to understand these psychological blockages. I need to understand what's standing between us and the ability to unite to fix our global problems, of sustainability. And that's when I started to basically dive into what I could describe the collective unconscious, the unconscious programming that drive us as a species, as societies, as nations. Something that I gained after going through this process of going through insanity is the ability to dive in the collective unconscious and to understand its structure, to understand what's driving it. And so we are not talking about things that are visible. We are talking about things that are invisible, like belief systems, like fear, like trauma.
Yeah. And as I said in the introduction, you work with Maria, which was talking on my podcast on ancestral trauma and her awakening. And so it's very interesting what you say. And just the last bit, it's you know, now because I'm struggling for so many years to find my footing in society. And yesterday I had a long talk, and I don't know why I somehow started to talk about the war in Ukraine and Russia. And I was talking to Ukrainian, which is supporting sending weapons and all that stuff. And we started talking. I'm like, there's no point in sending more weapons. We just prolong the suffering and all these things. But I don't want to go more into detail here. But I remember, so after like half an hour of talking, and I wanted to go home because somehow the heat, I got demineralized or something like that. So my, really tired and very thirsty. And it was 10:30, quarter to 11 at night. So I wanted to go home. But then he said one thing like, Oliver, I think you can get a really good job if you would stop fighting the system. If you would just, because you're very, very intelligent, you have a lot of skills, you can be in the system. And now I have to talk with you, which made the corporate ladder by fitting in, becoming empty, right? Something in myself is preventing me to get there. Something in me knows if I just live and accept how the system is and I work in the system, I will be empty. So I have a really hard time to do it without getting where you were, right? Having the success, I don't know what you were driving, but driving the Maserati and having the big house with the swimming pool and all these things, right? And by the way, I have friends which have these nice cars and they're really grounded. And I think they're like really, like stable and they don't fall into that trap. So there are people which are able to have this corporate success and being spiritual, awakened, and know what's going on and balance. But for me, it was really interesting, this talk I have with you. He's like, if you just, play the game. I'm like, no, why don't you guys see? It doesn't make sense because I've learned so many things through Mind Valley. I don't know if you know Mind Valley with Vishen Lakhiani, which brings out all these different classes, which are really nice to hear. And one of them is the sleep doctor, Roy or something like that is his name. And I went through the course and it makes so much sense because I had problems sleeping because of depression, anxiety, and all these things, right? Your brain is just working all the time. And if you don't hit the 10 minutes where you should go to sleep, you cannot sleep. And then you wake up 7 times a night. And so I was listening to it. And he found out through science, through putting, the diodes on your brain and measure that we have 4 types of biological, rhythms, like the traditional Chinese medicine talks about, like the Ayurvedic talk about for 5, 10, 15,000 years, right? But they're stupid, according to our society. And I see that now in the last 4 months, because I do this carpentry work and I really love to work with wood and create. But the jobs, you start at 6 a.m., 7 a.m., meaning I need to get up somewhere between 5 and 6 in the morning. I personally cannot handle that. And the answer from the society is, you get used to it, go earlier to bed. I'm like, people, don't you see 40%, according to science, wake up somewhere between, let's say in Scandinavia, the light is up early, right? In the summer, in the winter, late, like almost 9 o'clock in the winter. We get up somewhere between 6:30 and 8:15, naturally, 40%. Why do we need to be at work at 6? It's putting stress on us, on our physical, which then creates anxiety, fear. We don't go against it because you are fearful we cannot work, but why can we not start at 9 o'clock? 100 years ago, we worked from 9 to 3 in Scandinavia in the wintertime because there was no light, there was no energy. And this is only one thing where I have this like society, people agree with me, but not, right? Like, oh, we cannot do that. This is how it works. Like, but if you make a table, why do you need to start at 6 in the morning? You can also do that at 9 or 10 and you work longer. That's just my feedback. That's where I see this people react.
Here, to me, I hear 2 things. The first thing I hear is because society is still what is right now, it's still something we need unless we accept to be completely marginalized. And so one of the key I found is to find the balance, which is one foot in the old world and in society as it is today, and 1 foot in the new one. And basically, if I do that properly, I'm turning into a bridge between the old world and the new world, and the old world and the new one. From the old one, I help manifesting the new one. The second thing that appears very important is that, yes, one thing that our old world does not recognize is that we are all unique. And so if someone is able to work at 6 a.m. in the morning and is totally fine with it, it doesn't mean that everybody is designed to do so. And so I guess it has become a culture in this work on environment that this is how we do things. We wake up at 6 a.m. and we can do it, so you can do it. No, it's not because you can do it that everybody is designed for that. And that's a bit the irrationality of our society. That's the kind of the dogmas that rule in our world. It's the same in a way when we say, oh, success is about being good in business and making a lot of money. No, that's just some people are wired for that, but that doesn't mean that people who are wired for other things don't deserve to be successful. And so, in fact, the idea that only those who are wired for business and making money are successful is exactly the mentality, the mindset that is driving us toward planetary overshoot, because it leads to this competition for accumulation of wealth and resources. And so basically our whole world is stuck in all thinking mentality, which is deep-rooted in dogma and the idea that there is one way to succeed, and when this way is identified, and it will be spread everywhere. It's like monoculture in agriculture, right? It's like, okay, we're gonna use this place is going to be only for corn, and then what do we do to make it like, because nature is not designed that way. Then it spread it with pesticides and chemicals for it to be able to give like, and we basically destroy the land. And so interestingly, what we are doing to nature is exactly what we are doing to ourselves, is trying to identify systems that would work and then trying to apply them to everyone, not ignoring the fact in the process that we are all unique and that we have all different ways to be ourselves. And that's where we start to touch authenticity, by the way. We are now starting to go there, is that what I'm good at is not necessarily what you're good at. What works for me is not necessarily what works for you. And so basically, if I say, oh, I can do it, so you can do it, this is absurd. I'm just not recognizing what it means to be human beings. And there are 8 billion ways to be human beings, because we are about 8 billion on this planet. There's not one way. And so now, knowing this, we as human beings, we have to if you are conscious of that, you have to compromise with the old systems to find your place, right? Because unless you want to be completely marginalized, and that's possible, you may say, well, you know what, I'm going to live in the forest and I'm going to, I don't know how I'm going to find food, but I'm going to manage myself. I personally wouldn't do that choice because it's too much of a sacrifice. So I'm learning, right? I'm learning from this new state of being to work with the old systems so that I can make a living, but at the same time, making a living, building new systems that will make the old one obsolete. Because anyway, these old systems are in fact already obsolete. They're already unsustainable. So the new ones are necessary for us to have a future.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many aha moments I just had in the, what was it, like 3 minutes, 5 minutes? There's this one thing with, we are different, right? I do Ayurveda with Indian guy, and he says God didn't create photocopies, so 8 billion unique ways. So there's not 8 billion photocopies. Everyone is different. In Denmark, we have the Jantelov, which is that, we are a community, right? And we have to treat everyone equal. And I get it so many times. I had this discussion in school, and my Danish, I can speak fluent Danish, but there's some disconnection for me. I think emotionally, the language I cannot express myself emotionally in a certain way. And how the Danes generally look at it is like, we do it the same way, right? We meet at 8 o'clock. If you want to be a part of the community, you meet at 8 o'clock, not 2 past. Because if you meet 2 past, you're not respecting us. I'm like, yeah, but how is it about you respecting me? Because we are 2 or 3 which have a really hard time to be there in time. And for me, it's time is not linear, because I leave at the same time in the morning. Sometimes I'm 3 minutes early, sometimes I'm 5 minutes late. I'm like, how is that happening? It's the same time. I have the feeling I'm driving the same speed. So how do I have like this 5 to 8 minute difference in such a short time? As you say, I think the Jantelov is treat everyone equal by recognizing the difference, by accepting the differences, by supporting each individual by being different, because we as a society are strongest by accepting that we are different, by doing things different. So otherwise we are not why would we be differently built? And then there we go into the traditional Chinese medicine, Akashic record reading, Ayurvedic. I'm working on a seminar for 2 days on the beginning of July with an Aztec Indian. I've only talked to him on the phone. He's coming to Denmark, and they also have this different way.
Yes.
And when you talk about the old way and the new way, old world, new world, we're going into astrology. We're going into so many other things where people say we have changed, and the planets and the galaxy and all these energies have been changing. And what we see now with what's happening the last 3 years, it's just like this throw up of the old system trying to cling on to the old ways, which are not sustainable.
Yes. So basically, to get back, one thing that is important about why it's so important to be ourselves and to find what works for us is because this is where we will be at the best version of ourselves. And this is where we'll be the most able to contribute to the commons. When we are being suppressed, when we are being oppressed, what is happening is we build inner frustration, inner anger, and then we start to get into conflict. We start to get into conflict with one another. We start to get into conflict with the system. And then we start to build this idea that to be free, I need to dominate others. I need to be in control, right? And this is what's feeding this non-stopping rivalry for power that is driving us toward disaster, right?
Yeah.
So,
it's exactly as you say, like if I cannot be myself, if I start to dominate, if I have the power above others, then I can be myself.
well, that's an illusion, right? Because basically, if I have to fight to get on the top of the pyramid, then I have to fight to remain there. And therefore, I don't even have space to be myself. I'm going to be surviving, trying to get more control and more to protect myself from my rivals that want the same position as me because they believe that this is the liberation. When in fact, we are all in that cage, right? The one on top of the cage is just as much in the cage as the other because he's trying to fight to remain there. And so
yes, exactly.
Right now, what we see is this is why it's not sustainable. It's because we've been into this rivalry dynamics for as much as we can recall through history. And right now we have these very powerful technologies that can manifest in weapons of mass destruction, but also in systems of control, in systems of surveillance, AI, systems of social engineering. And so we were combining these two forces, these impulses to dominate and control, and those increasingly powerful technology, what we have is a recipe for self-termination.
Yeah.
And so the key is to let go of this idea that success is achieved by being on top of others, and replacing it with this understanding that success is me being myself, the best version of myself. And that best version of myself is also a version of myself that helps others to become their best version of themselves.
Yeah, and this is this compassion, this unconditional love, compassion for others. I've seen that because I've been depressed, or I thought I'm depressed, manic depressed. I think that was my awakening, right? Like I can conquer the world. I'm going to have enough money so my family can see the world. We can experience the different cultures. We can meet nature. And then 3 weeks later, I wanted to throw myself under a car. So perhaps that was my awakening. I don't know. Where do I want to go with that? Yeah, it's like the whole being yourself and love others can only happen, or accepting others can only happen if you love yourself, if you accept yourself. And accepting yourself and loving yourself can only happen if you can be yourself. Like if you really feel like I'm waking up in the morning and I do the things which want to be manifested through me, to say to a certain way, right? It's coming through me, then I'm authentic because there's no resistance. It just flows and the day just passes. It just feels light. It feels right. Whenever I have days where just things are just going and I'm not feeling like there's any resistance from me or from the outside, when I meet resistance on the outside by people being jerks, by people cutting me off on the street, by people talking bad to me in the shop, by whatever happens, right? My girlfriend, my wife, my husband, my kids, my family, whatever, they are throwing things. I just remember now when I say that, I must have been 20 or something in Switzerland. A lot of bullshit happens. There was a period, everything just dropped off me. Like the rain just dropped off me. Nothing was a problem. You just go with love and acceptance, and you're just like, someone is an asshole, you just open the door and you're just full of love for that person, even though that person was bad and mean to you. But that only happens when you're really in yourself, when you're authentic with yourself, I think. When you're really...
So from my experience, being authentic with ourselves and loving ourselves doesn't mean that we have to love someone trying to make us eat their shit.
It was not like that, but it's like someone has a bad day.
I'm just saying from my experience, right? So what I mean is that you can still be authentically yourself and express righteous anger, or in a way, anger that is well placed, because you need to place limits. It's not, because sometimes we are stuck in this duality, which is, love is good and fear is bad. And I see that a lot in spiritual communities. And I personally disagree with this. Fear has a purpose, love has a purpose. Fear is there to protect us in case of danger. Love is there to show us what is good for us, what we are attracted to, and to experience that.
It's
the
a
two are
guidance.
necessary for, it's the two, yeah, it's like indication, right? What I want, what tells me I should move away from, and what is attracting me. And basically I need both indicators, because otherwise, if I love everything, I'm kind of, where am I going, right?
But there's also the danger, now that you mentioned it, in the spiritual mystical world, that suppressing fear and suppressing anger.
Yes, absolutely.
It's dangerous, right? Because
yes,
then you take in that energy, and it will block somewhere in your body. It will manifest as a sickness. It will manifest as other things.
Or simply, what I notice is you can't face reality anymore. So, for example, if I'm talking about the sustainability challenges that we face to spiritual community, very often they can't hear it because it triggers fear, and they are basically afraid of fear. And that fear actually, yeah, that's how I said, like, they're afraid of fear because they consider it as something negative or low vibration. And so therefore we can't have these conversations because it creates fear. But yet this is something we need to acknowledge, because it's calling us to react. It's calling us to act. We need to change stuff, because right now our direction is not sustainable. And so to me, from my perspective, it can generate really big issues, and ultimately create this kind of spiritual bubble where it's all love and light, but we cannot face the disturbing parts of our reality, or we face them with shortcuts, like, oh, this is the spiritual conspiracy theories, kind of, where, oh, it is the cabal who's trying. It's not 100% wrong. It's just oversimplified. It doesn't bring clarity, discernment, understanding. It's just giving this feeling that the problem is outside of us, and so it's those bad guys, and as long as these bad guys will be exposed, the problem will be solved. That's not true, because these impulses of control and domination, they are within all of us. It's not just outside of us. And so they need to be acknowledged and recognized within ourselves. Otherwise, what we're going to do next is just create the new dogma, the new church that is going to replace the old one, but it's going to suppress part of ourselves. It's going to create frustration, going to create fight for power. And we are not stopping the cycle that is bringing us toward termination.
Yeah, it's
and
like,
so
it's we have the dark and the light. We have
yes,
the love and the hate. We have the fear and the flow. Whatever, it's all parts of us. And
yes,
if you suppress any of those, you suppress parts of yourself. So you cannot be really authentic. And I think that's where we are fearful, right? That there's parts of us we really love, but we cannot accept because we think it's wrong for whatever reason.
Yes. So we have a heritage that is deep-rooted in duality, and that notably was spread with Abrahamic religions, which is this idea that there is the divine, there is this battle, this eternal battle between good and evil, between God and Shaitan. And ultimately, what I came to realize is that actually these are projections of the conflict that may erupt inside of ourselves between what I could describe as our conscious divine part and our animal primal part, or between the ego and consciousness. And so basically, the key is not to suppress the animal primal part, is to realign them within the conscious part. What I'm saying through that is that, for example, my ego is going to be my survival instinct, right? And it can get really messy. For example, if somehow, because of my belief and my heritage, I believe that the world is a competition and it's survival of the fittest, then my ego may translate that into I must destroy my enemies in order to survive. So
Yes,
that's not the evil.
or someone is attacking me, so I need to kill that person, otherwise.
Exactly. But so that's not like necessarily the evil. It's simply an unconscious programming of survival that is dysfunctional, that is chaotic and dysfunctional, because it's deep, and very often it will be rooted in trauma, right? It's because in my experience or in my ancestor experience, we've been hurt by others. And so we somehow integrated that others are dangerous for us and that we need to get rid of them. I'm just giving an example, right? So our ancestors, they didn't have that level of consciousness and that level of awareness. So they translate all of this into archetypes. So the more primal animal part of ourselves become translated into demons, and the more our higher selves, the more conscious, the more divine parts were translated into angels. Actually, for me, this is just reflection of energies, level of consciousness, information that are inside of ourselves and outside of ourselves. And so one key of getting back to rationality is to disidentify, detach from our archetypal representations, which are, demons and angels, and start to see the underlying energy, information, and consciousness behind it. And so I'm saying this with quite some confidence, because when I was put in a psychiatric hospital, I was also within this realm of interpretation. Suddenly I was connecting to all these things, but at first I was interpreting it as, there are demons who want to destroy me, and the angels are sending me all this information. And then at some point I realized that, there are ego programs that are outdated and don't understand consciousness, are even afraid of it because they want control. They think that safety is achieved to control, and consciousness is something that is out of the control. And so I became rational when I start to see the underlying energies and information between all this archetypal representation, which are the representation of our ancestors. And I'm not blaming our ancestors. They interpreted things that were invisible, but that they could feel the best they did with their level of consciousness, with their level of knowledge. And so, of course, it went a little bit, there was some misinterpretation, and this led to this dual representation of the world.
Yeah.
Ultimately, everything has a purpose. Everything is there for a reason. It's just that sometimes this is being misunderstood, is being misplaced within ourselves, or it's being repressed within ourselves, and this creates blockages, this creates fragmentation. And this fragmentation is the state in which we are right now. So we are fragmented inside of ourselves, and we are fragmented outside of ourselves.
Yes.
The inner fragmentation is leading to the outer fragmentation. There is a conflict right now between Ukraine and Russia, because within human beings, there is inner fragmentation. We could look at it from the lens of trauma. Trauma is ultimately what creates the fragmentation. It's something that hurts me, that I cannot process, and that I will unconsciously compartmentalize to not feel the pain, to not feel the emotional pain. And so because this is really going a little bit like we're really into the multi-dimension. So I apologize for the auditor who might have a struggle to follow all of that.
We are really going deep here. I mean, it looks like it's flat, but it's actually, when I listen to you, I'm like realizing how deep and how how cross-connected all these things are. So they're not like just listening to it and like understanding it, right?
It's all interrelated, and it's deep because we are talking about part of ourselves that have not been made necessarily conscious yet, that are mostly unconscious, that are mostly still within the collective unconscious. So we're talking about the fragmentation, the state of fragmentation in which we are inside of ourselves and outside of ourselves. And if I look at the conflict between Russia and Ukraine, it's coming from a state of fragmentation. Russia has been at war with the West for centuries. The West has represented a threat to Russia for a very long time. And the West is driven, it's the ex-colonial power, and it has this hegemonic, like all nations, they tend to be hegemonic. They want to grow more powerful because that's how they feel safe. They feel safe when they are more powerful than their competitors. And that's also how they feel unsafe, because they're all trying to be more powerful and that they are all scaring each other. And so basically what has happened is that the West has pushed its geopolitical interest in a territory that is considered as part of its own in a way by Russia. Ukraine has been part of URSS and has been under Russian influence for decades. So when the West started to gain power there, influence there, that was interpreted as an existential threat by Russia. Because there is also all this history of war between Russia and the West. And so when we are playing these games of geopolitical competition for economic, cultural, military interest, we are also scaring each other as nations. I'm talking here not you and me, as nations. And so what happened when Russia feels threatened, because it has traumatic experience of being threatened by the West, it provides a primal survival response, a negotic response, a trauma response. And that's what generates the war. The problem here is with our current level of consciousness, we are blind to the unconscious mechanisms that are driving the show in our societies. And because we are blind to it, we've given this its human nature explanation.
Yeah, we know that. It's human nature. That's why we do it.
It's not human nature. It's primal strategies of survival that are completely outdated and unsustainable in our times, and that are deep-rooted in trauma and in the state of fragmentation that needs to be recognized and addressed.
Yeah. So,
and that's, yeah.
Yeah, this is, I mean, as I said, I had this discussion yesterday, and I do understand when you come from Ukraine and like all the time the Russians interfered and they want to be themselves. So there's the other energy there that the Ukrainians want to be themselves and not part of the Russians, but the Russians feel this is part of us. And then we go back to Europe has been going around to Africa, to South America, to Asia. So there's a lot of these other things. Now, when we don't want to go more there, at least.
But I would like to mention something that's important. I think it's a lie for humans that identify with the country of Ukraine, believing that becoming ourselves is becoming Ukrainian. No, Ukraine is a social construct. It has nothing to do with you. Becoming yourself is becoming yourself. Ukraine is a social construct, tribal social construct, with which you identify because you don't know it's a tribal social construct. So this is an identity that is not real, but it is stemming from a certain state basically a certain level of consciousness where we haven't identified that our nations is not who we are. It's social construct that have been created by our ancestors to survive in a world that was perceived as dangerous. And so we believe that we have to make blocks to define our territories, to define our identities, and we have to protect these blocks with armies and borders. And then we're going to have to be in competition with one another because anyway, we need the resources that are outside our blocks, and we don't know how to share. And so all this concept of identity, I really want to say, is coming from a level of consciousness which hasn't identified yet that those are just social constructs. Do you identify with your mobile phone? I hope you don't, right? But when we identify with our countries, it's like if we identify with our mobile phones. A country is a tool. It's not who we are. It's a social creation. And when we identify with our social creation, we are losing our power to transform our social structures. We are losing our creative power. And so I wanted to say that because that's so important to me and something that most people don't realize yet. And we end up killing one another for these social constructs, which is completely insane.
And I totally agree. And while you talked, I got this thing coming through me somehow. If you take it top down, right? That's how I learned as an engineer, top down approach. Take the helicopter view and then go down, 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 down until you're at the root cause. Now you took Ukraine, and I just want to make sure for the listeners, who knows when the people are listening to it now, 10 years. We also can look at it as Europe, right? United State of Europe or America. So we are Europeans, right? So, and they are Asians and they are Africans. And so we have this border there, right? So we have this construct, as you say, this mental construct, which is called Europe. And then in Europe, you have the construct of Portugal, Spain, Germany, Switzerland, you're French, you're Alsatian, you have been German. I mean, when you talk about ancestrals during the World Wars, the last 100 years, the region next to Basel, Germany has been German, then French, then German, then French. There have been generations which changed the passport 3 times, I've heard. It's crazy, right? So what are you? This is just a construct. And then from there, let's say I'm Swiss, right? So let's say then I'm Swiss. But then in Switzerland, then you have the different regions. I'm from Basel-Land. I'm from Basel County. I'm from Geneva. I'm from Vodva. I'm from Ticino. Then you go in Basel. Then you have, I'm from Rheinach. And then I'm from this street. So you go down, down, down in this tribal mentality. And in the old days, you had your little village, and then you had the little wooden fence around it to protect you from the bears and the wolves and the other tribes, which had the corn and you had the bread, and right. So it's going actually further down, and then in the end, it's going to you because you put your boundaries and you're not sharing, and you want what the other guy has next to you. So. And then we can, of course, go backwards out, right? That's why you put up the boundaries and more. Sorry, my dog is just running after something. Oh, yeah, there's a cat outside. Sorry. So I just saw my dog running out. But so she's protecting our garden.
Talking about territorial patterns.
So yeah, it's going from us outwards, right? Me, my family, my street, my city, my county, my country, my region, and then we are the world, right? We are fighting the aliens from another planet.
Yes. So I just want to clarify for the auditors who will listen to this. The problem is not that we have these social constructs. The problem is when these social constructs make us forget who we are and make us forget the universal creation that bonds us together. So let me explain. For example, when we become collectively more concerned about the nations that are dividing us than we are concerned about the planet that we share together, this is a major problem. When we are more concerned about the profitability of our businesses that are in competition with one another than we are with our humanity, this is becoming dysfunctional. When we are more concerned about our beliefs and our religions and our cultures than we are about the universe that we share in common, this is becoming dysfunctional. And what I just say is where we are. if you look at it, fact, on this planet right now, you'll find millions of men who've been trained to die and kill for their nations. How many have been trained to do it for Earth?
Yeah,
right?
for the planet.
And so we are in that state where our social constructs, our matrix has taken over the reality that we share together. And this is also, so it's interrelated with what I just said. It's related to our traumas, to our fears, what we've built to feel secure, but that's ultimately perpetuating the cycle of separation, of fragmentation, of re-traumatization. And the problem is that we cannot address it unless we are collectively aware of it. And right now, we are critically lacking this awareness. We haven't acknowledged that as a species yet. And so we are in the dark. We are in the dark. Yeah. But the light is here. It's all around us. But we have to deconstruct the false beliefs, release the fear, and heal the traumas that are keeping us disconnected from the light that is all around us and within us.
Yeah, sorry, that was my pen falling. There's many paths I can take here about this, and I try to keep it in one subject now. So I have to figure out what is the next question. I mean, we said authenticity and sustainability, and we talked about the subject for the last period. So what, how do I put that so the listeners get the most out of it is, how to become authentic with yourself. I mean, it starts, as I said before, right? If you go top down, in the end, it's like you fighting for resources and protecting yourself. But how do you become authentic so you can be loving and accepting the fear as a guidance and accepting the light as a guidance, so to have the best light? How to become more authentic for yourself so you can spread that out to your family, to your region, to your city, to your country, right? To get to a collective awakening, to a collective authenticity. But that's perhaps big. But let's start with ourselves.
No, that's not big. That's a multifaceted. There are many ways to respond, but the first thing that comes to my mind is what very often is standing on the way to be authentic is the fear of being rejected. It's this belief that it is dangerous for me to be authentic. And this is deep-rooted because basically in school, we haven't learned to be authentic. Mostly we've learned to follow the rules, to follow the norm. And so what can be an incentive for us to be authentic is that right now, the norms that we have been learning to follow are not sustainable. And probably the best norm we want to follow are the ones that are going to allow us to be ourselves. And so the first thing is to deal with our fear of being rejected and starting to express what we truly feel, what we truly think, and not what we feel other people will like to hear, other people will reward, other people will validate. So it's starting to practice this inner validation. It's learning to speak our truth, even if it is disturbing for people around us, because they are not used to it. And this is something that we have to learn from scratch, because it's almost like you're asking someone who has never walked before and has always climbed on, has been told that the way to be is to crawl, to stand up and walk. The balance is going to take time to find the balance. But here the key is to practice, knowing that I can only know myself if I allow myself to be authentic, because otherwise all I know is my shadow self, is the identity that I have built to fit in, to be accepted and to be rewarded. And so this is a practice. And for example, it starts with, you know what, everybody around me is having this conversation and seem to be agreeing, but I see things differently. And I'm going to say it. And one key also is to get rid of the idea that others will have to agree with me, otherwise we are going to have a fight.
That's a big problem there, right?
That's a big problem, right? Because we haven't learned that. Basically, my perspective to reality is unique. You will never see reality from the point of view in which I sit. Never in your existence. So your perspective of reality is unique. My perspective of reality is unique. And we all have a unique perspective of a reality that we are sharing together. If we are in the old world mentality, we believe that we have to find which one is the best perspective and adopt it.
Or we believe that everyone sees the world as I see it, right? That's also
basically we do blocks. So there is the block of people who see reality from that angle, and then there is the block of people who see reality from that angle, and they have their champions and they fight with one another.
Yeah.
And what they don't understand is that the reality that we share together is multidimensional, and that perspectives are not to be confronted with one another to know who has the best one. They have to be combined together to be enlarged and deepened. And so you will see that, for example, if we look at very common conflicts is in politics between the right and the left, you will see that the right hold pieces of the truth, the left hold pieces of the truth. But instead of working together to combine their pieces to get a more clarity on the puzzle, they are fighting, trying to push their perspective on the other. I'm going to give you an example of how it can look like, an easy example. And this I realized it after my spiritual awakening. I was looking at this debate between two intellectuals, and they were talking about a sensitive subject. The sensitive subjects are subjects that are going to touch our traumas, basically, our unresolved traumas. There's no sensitive subject. There's just wounds that we haven't dealt with. But anyway, so a subject that was going to touch trauma, and this was the roots of Islamic terrorism. And so there was a French atheist intellectual, and there was a French Muslim intellectual. And the French atheist intellectual was saying, well, it's not that complicated. Just read the Quran. There is verse which are so violent toward non-believers. There is also the story of the prophet, which has propagated his belief system through war and conquest. And of course, this is emulated among some of the believers. The problem is within the religious text and the story of the prophet. And on the other side, there was the Muslim intellectual was saying, no, the problem is with Western culture, materialism, the arrogance of the West, the history of colonialism, the marginalization of religious minorities in Western culture that creates so much anger among believers that some are ready to take weapons and kill for their religions. And what I realized before my spiritual awakening, I would have picked side. And probably I would have felt at that moment more close culturally from the atheist intellectual. But at that moment, I realized that actually both were true. That actually the Muslim intellectual was looking at the shadow of the Western culture. The Western intellectual was looking at the shadow of the Muslim culture. It's almost like they had the key for each other, but instead of exchanging the key and be like, you know what, you're right, you're pointing at our cultural weakness, and we as a tribe, as human beings, as a group of human beings, we need to address that to improve and exchange their keys. They were fighting, trying to push their view on the other. And so that's how ridiculous it is, right? And most of the time, we don't even notice it because we are talking about so superficial subjects that we don't even reach the depths where this one was touching something deep. And therefore, there was this kind of, very often they're talking about how we should, for example, how we should deal with the depth. We're not even realizing that the depth is a social construct, but that's not the story. But basically what I want to say is that here what we saw is that two humans that both had the key for each other, and instead of exchanging their keys, they were fighting an ego battle to push their view on each other. And so one of the key is to let go of this idea that I will only be able to share my truth when and feel safe if people agree with me. No. You share your truth, you let others share their truth, and together we make sense of reality. And so letting go of the fear of being judged, because also one of the issue here is that just as we are identified with our social constructs, we are also identified with our belief systems.
And that's what you share now. It's like a lot of message from myself. It's like when I share, I don't know how it was for you, but you sounded like in the beginning of being crazy that you offended a lot of people and you pushed.
But I wanted to convince everyone and that people
exactly
should agree with me right now. I didn't understand that, hey, chill out, you're just sharing a part of reality that people have not seen yet, and that's a bit disturbing. And so you got to do it in a proper way.
So how because that's the discussion I had yesterday. I realized when I got the feedback from this Ukrainian guy, like, wow, I really like, and now of course having the discussion with you, it's kind of just deepening. It's like, wow, I defend my point of view, like you just shared so nicely, because while you shared, I could see the shadows on both sides, right? The downsides on both sides. I'm like, yeah, this is so obvious. Like if we would just move a bit here and move a bit there, then the conflicts would be just dissolved to some degree. But I do the same in my life, right? Trying to convince people, hey, don't you see the light? Don't you see the problem here? Instead of accepting for me as a feedback or as a key for myself. So how did you solve that problem from being crazy, trying to convince everyone from the truth you see, from the perspective you see, instead of seeing and exchanging the keys and the knowledge, the wisdom, or whatever you want to call it, for your own growth, for your own peace?
For me, one of the key was to realize that everybody has pieces of the truth and to learn to listen. And one thing I've learned is if I want people to listen to me, I need to listen to them. And like to always understand their point of view. So for example, I totally understand what your Ukrainian friend was saying. For him right now, fighting is a matter of survival. And here you have somebody who is coming from a place where his people are living a terrible collective trauma. So you're already dealing with somebody who's heavily traumatized, potentially not someone who's ready to hear, yeah, but you're identifying with your country and you should not. It's not ready to say that. It's like the first is to understand, I totally understand what you're going through and bringing empathy. I cannot even be in your shoes, but I am sure that if I was in your shoes, I would react just like you. And you can say, then I have the chance to see it from another angle and to see the insanity of all of that. And my wish is for this to stop. And you know what? Your friend, in a sense, might be right that the aggression must stop first before we can start to talk. And maybe Russia cannot hear the language of reason at this stage. I don't know, because on the other side, we are not speaking the language of reason. I cannot blame. I don't even know why they would, because our leaders are not speaking the language of reason. They are basically speaking the language of war as well. Imagine if we had collective trauma awareness in Europe, and then our leaders will be, we've picked the collective trauma of Russia, and this is a trauma response, and how we're going to deal with this, right? It will be a completely different world, right? We are not there. Like the West is playing its dirty games to push for its geopolitical interest, and Russia is doing just the same. And now we have a war,
and
right?
China,
and good guy. Yeah, and there's no good guy or bad guys. There's just a bunch of bad guys who are like fighting for power and resources.
Yeah, but it's like the bad guy. It's depending on which side you stand. I mean, if I stand on this side, the bad guy is over there. If I stand on the other side, the bad guy is where I've stood before.
It's exactly the same, right? You can be looking from a Russian point of view and see how bad is the West, and then you can be looking from a Western point of view and see how bad is Russia. And both point of view is right, and both point of view are wrong, because basically, and the key for me is like, if I want people to deal with the shadow, then I first need to deal with mine and tell them how they can deal with theirs. I cannot be.
How do you work with your shadow? I mean, you said you went to meditative retreats, ayahuasca, psilocybin, LSD, I don't know, sound healing. There's so many modalities. If someone listens to this the first time, he's like, I had these crazy things and people think I'm crazy. I have no idea what's going on. These people, it somehow makes sense what they're talking about, but somehow this is just crazy. What can this person do? I mean, one thing you said, like, it's really to accept or try to listen and try to understand the other side. It's very hard, I can tell from my point of view.
So the shadow is about being truly honest of ourselves and looking at the part of ourselves we don't want to see.
And how do we do that? I mean, journaling, going to meditative state, take drugs, talk with other people,
All of
sit alone
that,
in a cave.
be honest. Catch yourself when you're tempted to lie. Catch yourself, like be observant of what you don't want other people to see. Because very often what we are hiding to others is also what we're hiding to ourselves. Because if we stop hiding it to others, trust me, we'll also stop hiding it to ourselves as well. So being really brutally honest about what I'm feeling. Yeah, I'm feeling vulnerable. I'm feeling afraid. I'm feeling upset. And expressing. So we are back to our authenticity here. And so if you catch yourself lying and tell the truth. And you will see, you will have to deal with yourself.
Comfortable, very uncomfortable.
Very uncomfortable, right? Because what I notice is that when I'm lying to others, I'm basically also lying to myself. Because when I'm truly showing who I am to others, I am also truly showing who I am to myself. And so that's one very efficient way that I have to deal with the shadow. And
it's like stabbing yourself in the heart sometimes. It feels like that.
It's very stabbing, yes. But ultimately, the more we do it, the more, and then little by little, we are peeling the onion.
Another thing, it is an onion, right? But if it feels like stabbing yourself, what came up to me is like, okay, I catch myself lying, and the first time I cannot change, right? Because it's too hard, it's too painful. The next time you might be able to change yourself, like, oh, sorry, this is my old self speaking. No, actually, I feel like this. And I just thought of myself like, okay, now to actually be able to do that in a conscious way, in a loving way, is to talk to yourself in a nice way. Because the first reaction, what came in my head was like, oh shit, I'm lying. I'm stupid. I'm an idiot.
Yes. No.
Why are you doing that?
Right.
And that's a wrong thing. It's like, would you say that to your friend? Which, when, let's say I'm talking to Benjamin and say, hey, Benjamin, I know you. This is not you. Why are you lying? I would like to be passionate and compassionate, loving to you. I would not go and say, you fucking idiot. Why are you lying? You're just a stupid. I would not do that to you, but we do that to ourselves in our head many times, right?
So yes, so I forgot another aspect of that is really to be empathic, compassionate with ourselves. The idea is not to, because that's the thing also, it's really, and it's interrelated one. One of the reasons why we lie to ourselves is because we are protecting ourselves from ourselves, because we've learned to be so bad with ourselves, right? And so here we already have to change the stance and be like, hey, I'm going to be my best friend. I'm going to be the best friend for myself, and I'm going to be my best coach. And so I'm going to take myself as a child, and I'm gonna look at what I'm doing wrong, and I'm going to help myself to do it right. And so it takes, and it's a practice, but I tell you, I can give you an example how it can look like sometimes. So one day somebody brought a cake in the office, and my girlfriend, she loved to share, but she's not, so she was at home. And I thought, oh yeah, I will share some of that cake for my girlfriend because it's nice. But then as I tried that cake, I really love it. And so the part that I have left for my girlfriend, and suddenly, so I didn't know, but suddenly I had this thought. It's like, oh, if I carry it on the scooter, it's going to be ruined. No point running it. Better eating it here. Why wasting it on the scooter? And so as I listened to that, I thought, oh yeah, it makes sense. Why would I run it on the scooter? And so I'm about to take that second part, and then suddenly there's my consciousness was like, but that doesn't make any sense. You're carrying food on the scooter all the time, and that's never been a problem. Why is it a problem now? And then I'm like, wow, I just caught my ego making up bullshit to numb my consciousness so I can get that other part of the cake without feeling bad about it. And that was really interesting because I had like caught my ego committing is little, and I realize it's not a conscious mechanism, it's an unconscious mechanism. And so for me, that was and it was really interesting because I was putting my hand on that box, like to take this last part. And so instead of taking the part, I closed the box, and I realized closing the box that on top of the box was written, "Sharing is caring," which is exactly what my girlfriend is always telling me. So I was like, wow, the universe is its way to send a message. But anyway, so we have to be curious or identify when do we bullshit ourselves to do things that are not aligned with the value that we want to cultivate. And it's not that we are bad, it's simply that we have an ego that's designed for that. Like it's designed to survive, and what he has learned is like to survive, you gotta hide, you gotta play tricks because this world is nasty. And if you play straight, you're gonna be screwed. Right. And that's the experience that our ancestors have lived. So you cannot blame your ego for being on that program. There was like honesty and truthfulness has not been valued in our society. Right. But now this is what we need to cultivate as human qualities to reconnect to ourselves, also to reconnect with one another, and to create the sustainable future in which we want to live. So be curious, and then you can use psychedelics are of great help. Yeah. I mean, they show us part of ourselves that have been hidden in plain sight. They're a great tool to expand that consciousness. I'm not saying that this is what people should do. I'm saying that this is one of the tools. But the intention and the practice is key. And so it's like, I'm going to be honest with myself, even when it's uncomfortable. And when I have the choice between comfortable bullshit or uncomfortable truth, I'm going to consciously choose uncomfortable truth. Because this is the path of authenticity.
So this is the path to authenticity. But what happens the more you do it? What will happen to you? The more you choose the uncomfortable truth?
Well, you start to really see yourself for who you were, and you start to really see the world for what it is. You start to open the veil of falling off. The veil of falling off. And this is where you start to truly make sense. And this is where you start to see the shadow both in yourself, but also in others and in society.
So is that the part when we started the whole interview with, 3 adjectives, 3 words that describe you, and you said evolving, the last 6 years has been a lot. So has that been part of it, like choosing?
Absolutely. Okay. Absolutely. It's almost like constantly choosing the red pill.
Yeah, we go to the matrix here.
Exactly. But because the matrix ultimately, but it's part of that, right? It's an archetype that represents exactly that. Is seeing what we don't want to see, and notably what is driving us individually and collectively. The part of ourselves, the part of our society that we don't want to see because it's uncomfortable to face, because seeing these things is completely out of the norm. But it's also very powerful because seeing these things is exactly what we need. These things, this shadow, is exactly what we need in order to address and transcend it. And we are right now living in times of ultimately, what is the sustainability crisis? Is the old world is the collective shadow driving the old world toward collapse? And what do we want to replace it with? With another shadow or with the light? I personally choose the light, but that means that I have to make that choice for myself every day. And so, yeah, I'm dealing with a lot of discomfort. Yeah. It's not pleasant every day, but the more I do it, the more I see clearly, the more I become knowledgeable about myself and about the world surrounding me, and the more I can make conscious choices, the less I am driven by my unconscious programs.
So that's basically what comes to me here is from these different teachers. Michael Beckwith is a very beautiful soul explaining these things, if you know him. It's basically shining light to the shadow, what you explain. I think that would be like a way when, and that's very abstract for many people when you listen to these spiritual people and teachers. Yeah, you have to shine light to the shadow and you will be more light. But this is basically what it is. It's like the uncomfortable choices of doing the right thing.
Yes.
And that way you, as you said, you see more and more of your shadow. You start to realize, oh, wow, I did all these things, but you cannot just go to the root cause. You go layer by layer by layer by layer. For some people, this can be years, decades of unlayering.
I think this is going to take some time because we've not done the work yet. We've not intentionally done the work yet. So we are coming with an heritage that this has not been done before at a collective level.
So that's another question I had here. It's like what you just touch here is like this. One thing is you talked about ancestry. You're from Alsace, so you have like your parents, your grandparents, and whatever trauma there. I talked also with Maya about that ancestral trauma. But then there's also the rebirthing, which I start to believe more and more. So there's also shadows and karma, dharma, karma from past lives, which are intermingled with these traumas we are carrying, right?
Yes. So basically, in a sense, you imagine the shadow is whether it's the collective shadow or the individual shadow, is respectively part of the collective and part of ourselves that we are disconnected from. So when we shine light to it, or basically when we bring consciousness to where there was none before, to what was unconscious, we became more whole. And so these create a lot of expansion. This generates a lot of consciousness expansion. And consciousness expansion has many implications, is expansion of knowledge, expansion of empathy, expansion of creativity, expansion of discernment, expansion of vision, etc., etc. And so this is really a pool of human qualities that we can tap into and unlock, knowing that the alternative is to run away from it. But as we run away from it, we have it driving ourselves. And it's not driving ourselves in the direction that is desirable. It's driving ourselves toward collapse.
Yeah.
The sentence I like to say, which is inspired from Carl Gustav Jung's sentence, is until we make the collective unconscious conscious, it will drive our societies toward collapse, and we will call it unchangeable human nature.
Wow. This is, again, what is on the outside is on the inside from ourselves. I mean, some people say when you go into ourselves, you see the universe. But what you said now here is like, if we are not able to look inside ourselves and our unconscious behaviors, it will be represented on the outside from the collective.
Yes. And basically, when we look at the problems that we are facing today, whether it's growing inequalities, whether it's climate change or biodiversity, extinction, or ecosystem destruction, or the financial debt, or the war, these are all projections, outward projections of what we need to deal with inward. And so it's almost like the mirror effect. And the problem is, with our current level of consciousness, we consider these as externalities. We don't realize that they are co-creation, collective co-creation that stem out to what is driving us inside of ourselves. And when I'm saying it, it's so obvious to me now, and it's so logical, but I'm also reminding myself, but for many people, this is still a huge blind spot. Yeah. It's almost like we have repressed ourselves. It's part of not being authentic. We have repressed ourselves to fit in, and therefore we are completely disconnected from our interiority, from our inner selves. And therefore, this is the huge blind spot, and yet it's there. We haven't recognized that everything we've created in terms of social constructs come from inside of us. The society that we have designed, they are byproduct of our thoughts, which themselves stem out of our beliefs, which themselves are related with our fears and our traumas. The house in which I am myself right now existed in someone's thought before it was built in the material world. And so we are co-creators of the world in which we live in many aspects. It's not that we have full control. We are co-creating with Earth, with other species, with the entire universe, but we have this creative power. And many things, the society in which we live is coming out from inside of ourselves. No, what we have not seen is that we've created this, and this is shaping us back. And we don't see that we are the initiators. We are the one that are creating this or perpetuating it. And we don't see it because right now this is an unconscious creation. We have not collectively co-created a society yet at a conscious level. We've done it at an unconscious level. And this is why we are prisoner of it right now. And that's what the movie called The Matrix.
Yeah, it's we are just opening the box of something else here again.
It's all interrelated, and basically I'm simply following the trail of the conversations. But
no. I just say to the people which listen to that, I mean, I listened to one of your French interviews about multidimensional perspective, and we touched up on this as well. So we can just open more and more and more because we could probably talk for a week here. So the thing is, we touch now, and you really nicely described authenticity. I think that should help the people how to be authentic more. Then the sustainability part, is there anything you want to add to what we talked? How is the authentic part helping our sustainability?
So basically, if we reconnect to ourselves, we're also reconnecting to our creative power. We can detach from, I am not this nation, I am not this business, I am not this religion. I am someone who can transform that. And right now, as our systems are increasingly unsustainable, they are requiring profound transformation. And the best way to transform these systems in a way that is sustainable and that is desirable is to come from that place of authenticity. Another way to put it is that the sustainability crisis is showing that our social norms are outdated. From which space do we want to modify the social norms? From a space of authenticity, right? It's not about being against it and thinking that what will solve the problem is the opposite of the norm that we have right now. That's just another unbalance. It's not moving from left to right. It's just be like, hey, what norm is going to help me to become the best version of myself? And what norm is going to help me to help others to be that too? And that's a norm that is cultivating authenticity. And and another key aspect of that is that when we are not authentic, we are disconnected from ourselves, we are frustrated. From this state of frustration is going to come all the addictions that we have. Trying to numb ourselves by consuming, by trying to be on top, etc.
Yeah,
so
overeating.
Overeating, right? And on top of that, if I'm not being myself, I don't even know what are my needs. So I may say that, I need to have more money to feel good. I need to have more,
Cars,
more possessions,
more house,
more status, more power, right? And so from our addiction stem from that state of disconnection, which stem from our lack of authenticity. And it's these addictions that are driving us toward disaster. So all of that is interrelated. Another aspect is that if we want to develop peaceful relationship with one another, we need to accept ourselves as we are. How can we accept ourselves as we are if we don't allow ourselves to be authentic? And then we are stuck between I'm following the social norm or I'm being angry against the social norm because of my frustration, right? So all of that, authenticity is the key to accept ourselves as we are, is the key to reach contentment, to really identify what we truly need and break free from our addictions, is the key to developing harmonious relationship with one another and help and understanding that the game is not to be on top of others, is to empower each other to be the best that we can be together.
Yeah. And then we're more sustainable. It's
not more sustainable, because right now we are not functioning well. We will be more sustainable once we've reached the point of sustainability. Right now, we're not even there yet, right? So we'll think about becoming more sustainable once we are there. Right now, we have to think about unlearning all these programs that are outdated, tapping into our creative power to become ourselves and to untap the capability to be a sustainable species, which means self-aware, a self-aware species, aware of its interconnection with the rest of the universe, aware of its creative power. What I call homo conscious. You know, right now I think we are sapiens. We think, but we don't really know why we think the way we think. And we're kind of driven by all these automated patterns. I think the sustainability challenge is calling us to become conscious, aware of ourselves, and aware of our creative power.
Yeah, this is so crazy. I had several thoughts about asking you, and not even a second later, you just answered the question I had in my head. This was really interesting. I mean, I'm now in this realm for 2, 3, 4 years, right? Not 7 as you. So I can see that pattern, right? When you're in a group, some people say the power of intention, the group, right, being 8 or 12. Jesus apparently talks about the power of 12, and there's also this intention groups of 8 people, or when you're working together with others. So when you're together, you create better ideas, and it's kind of like the ideas are here in the consciousness of the groups. And when I have this interview with you, and I've seen that with other people, so the question pops up in my head, and my guest is already answering it before I can even ask it. So this is group consciousness. While I came up with another question in my head, how is your beliefs or understanding on, ancient civilizations? I mean, further than Egypt. We were told we were just living in forests for 200,000 years. I don't believe that. It cannot be. We are so curious and creating so much that I cannot imagine that. Do you think there was another civilization which was more conscious, which disappeared on the planet for whatever reason, earthquake, asteroid, whatever happened? Or are we really in a place that we are more conscious than any high civilization that existed before on this planet?
So first, I don't know, because I don't have a perception on this. I don't see this.
Okay.
But what I believe is that the civilization that we are talking about might be from a different dimension. That's my personal belief. So we might be into the multidimensional space. So we might feel about something that happened in another dimension. I haven't seen evidence of such civilization in this dimension yet, but I don't know. I tell you, because this is something, and I would say it doesn't really matter to me, because the problem we're facing today, whether this has happened or did not happen, is still the same. And so I personally don't let myself distracted with this question. I let people who are passionate about this deal with it. But I don't know. I really don't know. I haven't seen evidence about that. But what I feel intuitively is that we are talking about something that happened in another dimension.
Okay, yeah, and then there we go also to all these different people channeling aliens, channeling their higher self, and sharing information. And another thing is also when we talk about, let's say, group A and group B, and then you have like this group A has control over a certain thing, let's say a power plant or a dam or something, and then this power plant or this dam is exploded. Now, intuitively, you go like, oh, this group A has been responsible for that, so they exploded it. But we don't have a proof. The fact is this power plant or this dam is damaged, exploded. That's the fact. Yes. Who did it? We don't know. It can be just an illusion, right? A third party could have come and did.
But that's the truth. Something happened, right? If this is a fact and it has exploded, something made it explode, but we might not have the information. Right?
About who was it, right? So it's like, it's like this illusion of who was, and that's basically what came up to mind when you said it doesn't matter if there was, I look at Lemur or Atlantis, right? We say Atlantis was this very high civilization which disappeared through the flood, Ark Noah, right? The flood, so it doesn't really matter because we are here where we are. So the fact is we are here where we are, so we deal with the situation as it is. Who caused it? As you said as well, there might be the cabal. Cabal could be good, could be bad. We don't know. And we can blame them for all these things, so we externalize it, or we can work in the situation as it is, where we go back to the authentic, become more authentic with yourself.
Yes.
So I think we've been talking about a lot of things, and I mean, there's little words for me. It's like AI. How can AI help? How can AI be a problem? Dogma. How do you explain dogma for the people which do not really know? Then there was meditation. Oh, and one thing I think I need to ask. There was, of course, also things in between, but you mentioned in your first crisis, your first awakening crisis, spiritual crisis, that you got the download. If you follow that path, you're going to be insane or you're going to die. Now, you have been.
There's a risk.
The risk.
Yeah, it's not
So
you're going to be that, but you might end up inside and you might die. And so you must be ready for it. It's like this is not a safe path. Are you ready to lose your sanity and to potentially use your life? So it was not like you were going to die, but there's a big risk.
Okay, so there's like the potentiality. From what you shared today, I have the feeling you went into the insanity to some degree, also as a teacher to see the insanity in the world, right?
Yes.
And there was someone, and I don't remember who said it. It's like I've seen it a few times this year, I think. To be sane in an insane world means to be looked at as an insane person or something like that. Like, because we're in an insane world, but if you're sane, you will be the one which is called insane.
Yeah, in a way, yes. Although I am past that, I don't think people see me as insane. They probably often don't understand what I'm talking about, but I don't think I'm being considered as insane. But for a while I was, yes.
Yes, and there's also ideas on, perhaps we can touch on it. Let's see if we have the energy. And the second part, as you said, there's the risk of die. And for me, intuitively or with my filters, who was dying, right?
Oh yeah. So there was the death of my old identity and what I believed I was. No, there were a moment where I could have died because my what I was going through led me to do things that were physically dangerous.
Okay.
And so for example, there's one moment in my process I really felt I was God and it was just me, and that basically the universe was me, and that other people were just an illusion. I remember taking my big bike and driving like crazy, like there's no risk anymore, and really hitting the gas and being like, and I was driving really well, like I really felt like in control, but literally I was completely ignoring the danger. And I went to a bar and I thought, this is my bar and I don't give a shit anymore because this is my universe. And so I ended up being beaten up by the security, right? Really badly. And that's one kind of a moment where I was starting to realize, whoa, I'm miscalculating stuff here. I thought I was God and in control of the universe, and I just get really badly hit, and I could have died that day when I was beaten up.
So you were insane and in risk of death at that moment, because
absolutely,
you
I was
completely
unbalanced.
disconnect
Basically,
reality.
I was connected to the divine, but my ego had identified with it. It's like you're connected with the omniscience of the universe, but your ego identified with it. And so you're unbalanced. And this is not functional as a human being. You cannot identify with the universe because you're not a human being.
Yeah, you're not grounded.
And so I wasn't grounded, right? That's what we call spiritual emergencies, basically getting unbalanced. So there was literally a risk of physical death as well. I survived. I know some people didn't. Someone had a similar crisis shortly before me, and he was shot by the police, dead.
Oh.
But he was like a 2'10" ex-MMA fighter.
Oh shit.
And he thought he was God. And when I mean, I guess he was connected to everything, to what I was connected as well, but basically the same. He felt like other people did not matter anymore. And so when the police came to neutralize him, he charged them with a knife, and he ended up being killed. And that could have happened to me. At that moment, I felt that if people would have shot me, I was invisible. I was immortal.
Yeah.
I felt immortal because I was connected to that immortal omniscience. But that was not who I was, right? So there was risk technically that was true. I was literally flirted with death.
Yeah.
And I also flirted with insanity. In a sense, I could have ended up completely ungrounded, or I could have ended up medicated for the rest of my life.
Yeah. So it happened. What you saw in this first thing happened.
Well, the warning was very accurate. It happened. But also because I had accepted this as a potential outcome and I was ready to put myself on the line, I decided to keep going despite having it happening.
Yeah.
So when I didn't freak out like, oh my God, I got insane. I was like, yeah, I was well, I already said I was ready to risk that. So I kept going because I wanted to know.
But that's why it takes probably several people, and some of them are not making it, right? They get insane or they die, and some go through it.
I think there's not many people who go through it. I think I was very lucky. And a lot of people or in the psychiatric hospital are people who didn't make it through. They could if they were helped, if they were understood, but the system doesn't understand them.
That's of course another path to take. It's like to help the system to actually help those people which are in a situations similar to yours, so they actually make it through instead of being medicated. I'm sure many people which take antidepressants had downloads and they block it because it's so different and they don't want to accept it because it's against the norm.
And I think a lot of people that are in antidepressant are simply feeling that their life and society doesn't make sense. And they are right, except that it's like people who are suffering from eco-anxiety. We say, oh, you have a mental illness. No, it's not a mental illness. It's a normal reaction. It's Krishnamurti that said that it's not a sign of good mental health to be well adapted to a sick society. And so, we are starting to realize now, because that our environment impacts us mentally and emotionally, and that the high level of depression is not just people who have a problem. It's maybe the environment that's becoming toxic. And this is gaining traction as a realization, although it's still blocked by the mainstream psychiatry, but it's getting traction. And so there is realization now. There is movement that are a new science that is connecting those dots, but it's not yet accepted and recognized, because it needs to be accepted and recognized before it can lead to collective realization and systemic transformation. So the process is on. And you were talking about, to get back to also, because you mentioned about AI, you were saying what will make AI supporters, and I'm shifting the subject, but I think this is also a key subject. And I'm sorry for shifting, and I hope everybody can follow. It's all interrelated at the end of the day, but this one I can't make a transition where I show the connection. What will determine if AI serves us or not is the intention. If we use AI in these rivalrous games to be more competitive, to have more wealth, to have more power, it will be self-destructive. If we use AI to support us in this process of healing and self-reconnection, it will be regenerative. So it all comes back to our intention. Which intention? How do we program the AI for which purpose?
Exactly. I heard that from.
And that's valid for every technology.
Exactly. It was just coming up to me because this week, I think it was, I listened to an interview on the CEO. What is it? I don't remember the name. I'll put it on the blog. But it was with the Google X AI programmer, which thinks we are really at a tight point at the moment, exactly because of what you say. It's depending what we put in, and he says it's the humanness which makes AI dangerous or not. Right? It's like our consciousness we put into the AI, in which direction it will go. And because it's so exponential, we're on a very critical point, because we don't realize how fast it's moving forward. right? So we soon gonna get videos which are completely produced by AI, and we cannot see if it's real or wrong. And that's,
Well,
of
you know,
course,
we're going to have to get back to our senses. It's calling us to get back to our senses, to really break free from the state of collective hypnosis in which we are. Because and hopefully it will work. Hopefully we'll realize the implications of all these technologies and the needs associated with this implication. There's something else you mentioned before. Sorry, because I really like this.
it's good.
Dogmas. Dogmas are basically belief systems that are non-evolutive because they pretend to be the entire truth. And so what we need to do is identify them and deconstruct them. Whether they are religious dogma, whether they are economic dogma, whether they are cultural dogma, whatever, ideological dogmas, they need to go. One way to understand why. The reality in which we are, the universe in which we are, is in constant evolution. The knowledge that we have is in constant evolution. If a belief is dogmatic, it won't evolve. And it will become obsolete and unsustainable. Now, if we build our society on top of these beliefs, then it is our entire society that will become obsolete and unsustainable, which is exactly what we are experiencing today. And so the key is to remember what a belief is and to make sure that we have no dogmas. Every perspective, every belief that we have is relative, subjective, and limited. The reality in which we are is absolute, objective, and infinite. A belief will never encapsulate the entirety of a reality. Therefore, it cannot be dogmatic. And so we have to let go of all this dogmatic belief and process the fear. Generally, when we have a dogmatic belief, we also have a fear and a trauma behind it. And so it's also about releasing the fear and healing the trauma. I'm going to tell you, like the dogmatic belief of capitalism. Capitalism is the best system that has ever existed. It's filled with trauma. The trauma of scarcity, the trauma of colonization, etc., etc. And the fear that if we remove capitalism, we are losing our competitive power and we are going back to where we were before. No, capitalism works in certain contexts. It doesn't in others. It cannot be a dogma that this is the best system that has ever existed and the best system that will ever existed. No, it worked in the past. It's not working anymore.
Yeah, I mean, we see that with the banking system falling apart to some degree.
Exactly, right? So any dogma, it's like, yeah, everything is contextual. Everything is relative in our world. There's no space for dogma because dogma will lead to incapability to evolve, which will lead to unsustainability and collapse.
Yeah, I think we really went a lot around here.
Yes, we've covered a lot of subjects.
And I can see in the
that's...
back, your windows are dark. So I don't know if
Yes,
it's darkness outside. For me, the sun is slowly coming to my terrace. I'm having the sunny. It's actually cloudy, and I actually wished for some rain so I can work on our interview here and finish it up. Is there any tip, advice, besides all these different tips and advices we had throughout the interview, you would like to highlight for the listeners? Any call to action that comes to mind intuitively?
Yes, sure. No, the first thing that came is like, let's remember we are in this together. In this process of deconstruction and evolution, deep transformation, we are in this together. And the call is learning to be ourselves and supporting each other in the process, because this is something that we haven't learned and we can tap, or at least that we've forgotten for so long. And we can tap into our old ways to find the manual. We're going to have to write it together. And each of us is going to have to find its own way. And so, but the best is to do it together. So to support authenticity within yourself and to support authenticity outside of yourself, because this is the norm that will get us to a future that is desirable.
And I was just thinking, as adding to this, being authentic, the fear is also of losing the ones you love. your connections to the people you have. I had an interview with Schirach Olsen. He's very good in Norse mythology and Vikings and all these things. And he told me as well, when he started to be more authentic, putting the boundaries and sharing what he wanted in life, most of the people, connections around him just fell off. And this is, of course, very stressful for people because we are social creatures. But he also said the more he trusted in the process, I don't know if you can agree on that, the more new people came into his life, which were better, more aligned with who he was. So in the beginning, your life falls apart. You said you lost the job, right? The project was gone, everything, the universe liberated. So you might lose your job. You might not have the money. You might lose your wife, your husband. Family members will distance from yourself, but new people will come if you trust the process. So what is your take on that?
No, absolutely. I mean, I can only confirm that. The people you're going to lose anyway is people who are not ready to accept yourself as you are. So maybe they are not relationships that deserve attachment. And no relationship deserve attachment, by the way, although and the new people are going to come are people that really resonate with you, resonate with who you are, share the same value. And so this is also about learning to let go, letting go of these bonds, and also being an example, because ultimately, by allowing yourself to be truly who you are an example for others. And they might not see it yet. Those people that you are losing, they might come back later. But it doesn't matter. It's not the point if they come back or not. You're going to let go of the people that couldn't accept you as you are, and you're going to find the people who love you for who you are. And that's perfect.
Super. I mean, that's like a really nice ending. If there's anything you want to add, any connections, I mean, your webpage, where can people find you? That would be one thing.
Oh, yeah, people can find me in newworldtogether.com. And for the people who want to dive into this aspect of sustainability through consciousness expansion, I do conference on that. I do workshops. I do training programs. So don't hesitate to contact me if you want to dive deeper into that. This is my passion. And looking forward to see what we will co-create together. We are living at a very exciting time of human history. I don't know where this is taking us, but let's play our part and let's see where we're going to end up.
Yeah, let's become more authentic, and we will definitely get closer to it's darkness, and I think that's also the fear of many people, to go into the darkness, to be more authentic. But that's beautiful. I mean, this was a much longer talk than expected, but we both agreed we just talk as long as it takes. And I'm sure there will be more talks coming, and I feel more and more like I should probably get to Bali soon, or other places. And I regret I haven't done interviews for the last 6-7 months, but that was part of where I am at the moment. And I need to redefine my podcast and my webpage and the whole package, because talks like that are what's driving me, give me energy, and probably a way of me to give back to society. And thank you, Benjamin.
Thank you.
Benny.
Thank you, Ole. Yeah, whatever. I have many nicknames, whatever fits, whatever makes you feel right about me. I'm totally okay.
Yeah. Now this was in English. I didn't feel confident to do it in French at the moment, even though I studied, right? But perhaps eventually we will do a French version. I have one French interview anyway on my podcast. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you, Oliver.
People, if you have any questions, reach out to Benjamin or me. Share, of course, anything, and we'll put the different things we talked about in the linking at the end of the podcast, in the show notes, YouTube, etc. There was one book you mentioned. We will add that as well. Yeah. And thank you for that, and have a great day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.